Ring Doorbells is a company that raised over $200 million in funding before reaching a $1 billion acquisition from Amazon. We've got their Series A pitch deck where they raised $4.5 million way back in 2014, 4 years before their 2018 acquisition. We're going to dive into everything that they put into their pitch deck and why it worked so well with investors. As always, click the links in the description to find out more about this deck, or you can schedule a call with me to talk about your business and how we can take it to the next level. So without further ado, let's dive right into the deck. All right, so this is Doorbot, which eventually became Ring, which was then eventually acquired by Amazon. The doorbell for smartphones was their tagline, and you can see their product here on the front page. Let's dive right into this deck, shall we? So they go right into the last 18 months talking about traction. So again, as we talk about, the most effective pitch decks are the ones where you talk about the things you want investors to know right off the rip. In the last 18 months, presumably from the time that they raised their seed round to when they're now launching their Series A, they successfully shipped 20,000 units. They had 5 million in sales, and they had some big VCs that had already come on. So they're talking about how many they sold, they're talking about their revenue, and the big name investors on board. These are all great traction numbers. This is very attractive as a slide. And then they actually go right into mistakes. So what have we learned so far? They flick it over to hardware is a mature industry. Presumably this slide had a lot of pitching alongside it, as the founder likely was walking through context on why this slide matters. They then talk about there are no fail whales in hardware. I'm actually not fully familiar with what this terminology means, which actually is kind of interesting thing to note. Sometimes those inside jokes, sometimes those internal terms may not land as well with an investor set that's not familiar directly with your business or with some of this terminology. So that's something that I think is important to recognize and consider in a pitch like this. Is this going to be relevant for everyone? Because in this case, I'm not totally sure what this means. Then they have a snapshot here of a review of the Apple iPhone. I'm not exactly sure, again, why this is totally relevant to their pitch. This is where the founder themselves would be pitching and suggesting all the reasons why this is relevant. But again, they're focusing a lot of their time on the things that they've learned, which potentially presents an opportunity for them to capitalize on these mistakes moving forward. So if I had to guess, this pitch is going to be something along the lines of, look, we have so much room to grow. We've already developed a product that people want, but we've learned a lot of very expensive lessons, so we're looking to raise money in order to capitalize on the newfound knowledge and wisdom we have to make this product even better. Presumably, what this slide is suggesting is that by releasing a product update that is small and incremental, you don't necessarily see a lot of the drastic changes from iteration to iteration, which can cause customers to be fatigued with the new products, similar to how people say this about the iPhone. That being said, it's pretty funny that people were saying this about the iPhone 5S, and we've certainly come a long way since then. So even though it seems like small and incremental changes, they are very impactful over time, and certainly cumulatively, it adds a lot of additional benefit. They continue to compare themselves to the smartphone with their doorbells. They've got 16 members versus the 75,000 in Apple. This is a really bold claim, certainly, to argue that they are the Apple of doorbells. So the pitch here must have been smart home technology as a whole. You're bringing doorbells, and then they also launched all kinds of products alongside those doorbells that enhanced the home's value. Perhaps that's what they're arguing here, and that they're working towards that product, but maybe they've got a really efficient team or many other reasons why it was relevant to compare the team members here and the employees. Also, it's fascinating to see team members versus employees, right? They're trying to draw on the close-knit community of their team and culture, but I don't think this is necessarily apples to apples. It's very impossible to have a family style of environment with 75,000 employees, just because naturally there's going to be a lot of bureaucracy, and you're going to have inter-company cultures and cliques and groups that form just because 75,000 people are all not going to get along perfectly, no matter how hard you try. So it's an interesting comparison here. Of course, they're smaller stage than Apple. For me, this slide doesn't get me that excited, but maybe the pitch would have phrased it differently. Then they say January we regrouped. So perhaps this slide of the employees from the slide prior might suggest that they were overwhelmed. They only had 6 people. They didn't have staff across all their different verticals. And so in January, they began to regroup to address these problems. And he goes into further say, delivering a complete solution, the customer experience is their business, and it had to be at the level of other hardware providers. This obviously landed very well for investors. They not only want to build hardware, they want to capitalize on the experience, make the software side work in harmony with the hardware products that they're providing, make it look good, make it feel good, make it work well. Then they go into specifically where their focuses lie. And as you can see, this is a pie chart that's relatively even with a bunch of different slices of electrical, firmware, design, all the different pieces that are required to make a doorbell or a smart home software service. So I guess this is really demonstrating their domain expertise. Maybe this is almost a use of fun slide where it's like, look, we need to have specialists on each one of these verticals because they're all so important for us to have a successful product and network of services for our clients. That's what I think that they probably were pitching here. It's good to show that they really understand what's going on within their product. But this doesn't add a ton of value to me because they're all basically arbitrary 10% numbers with a little bit 1 or 2% focus on 1 or 2 different things. Also, I think they probably should have had 3% for mathematics because this chart doesn't actually add up to 100%. So I'm not sure how that one slipped through the cracks, but this doesn't actually add up to 100%. So there's a 3% in here somewhere missing. Maybe that was intentional and that's something that they said in the pitch as a funny joke, but something that doesn't land very well for somebody that doesn't hear the pitch directly from the founder. And if that was an oversight, that's really concerning. Next slide, there are 2 soft things, but there were 3% missing. So I would have made 3 soft things, mission, brand, and then maybe 1 other perspective here. But that's just me. And then they have more roadmap and traction stuff. So what are we doing? They're focusing on building the company, faster iteration, long-term approach. I don't love this slide either. Grew the team over 6x is nice. Although they said they've got 6 team members and it says here we're now a 40 team members. So I feel like this slide may contradict one of those earlier arguments. I haven't heard the pitch, but that would be a confusing point for me. I don't love this slide because I feel like it doesn't really tell me a whole lot. All right, long-term approach, that sounds great. They've recognized competition from a hardware perspective. I think that this slide could probably add more value into what their approach is going to be across different styles of products or how they were going to bring it to market. Perhaps a lot of this came through the pitch because of the fact that we know this company's been really, really successful, but this slide doesn't tell me a whole lot about their roadmap and how they're going to go to market. Finally, a pretty standard ending slide here. This is your thank you slide. Doesn't add a ton of value for me. So all in all, it's an interesting deck. We know looking back that this company was really successful. They raised a lot of money in this round with this deck, as well as the fact that they had a $1 billion acquisition. That being said, I wasn't the most impressed with this deck. It didn't show a ton of their roadmap, a ton of their plan of how they were going to scale and bring that product to market at mass adoption levels. That being said, they started it off with a great traction slide, and that sometimes is all that matters. If you've got great traction, lead off with that, say how successful you are, and then the rest just kind of falls into place because nobody really cares. You're raising money to beef up those traction numbers that you already know exist. That's what they did here. They raised $4.5 million and went off to the races. So with that, thank you for watching. Leave a comment below if you have any other questions or suggestions on another deck that I should check out, and I'll talk to you next time.